Over the past 12 months, humanity has been faced with a once-in-a-century pandemic. Globally, over 110 million people have been infected and at least 1 million lives have been lost. Among them are those of 53,000 South Africans. The economic impact of COVID-19 on livelihoods and economies has been huge. The question then is, how do we turn this around? Welcome to this special broadcast in the series Growing Gauteng Together Towards the Next Normal. My name is Fifi Peters. Today we are going to look specifically at the economic impact the pandemic has had on Gauteng and what the province is doing to mitigate the negative effects and drive economic growth. Joining me now are Park Stau, the Gauteng MEC for Economic Development, Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development, as well as Mosa Tshabalala, Group Chief Executive Officer of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Good afternoon to you both. MEC, if I can begin with you, because I can imagine it has been quite a crazy time for you, having been appointed to your new portfolio just before we entered the third lockdown in December to mitigate against the then second COVID-19 wave. How then has your transition been so far, particularly given how your portfolio has so many branches, sir?
Thank you very much, Fifi, and good afternoon. Certainly the transition has been demanding in many ways because one had to readjust to the responsibility of assisting in driving the economic transformation and growth prospects of the province of Gauteng. But one came in at a time when the department was busy with our business planning exercises. So you literally had to go in immediately and engage with the business plans and the outputs that you would want from the department. It gave us almost an opportunity to reflect on how far the departments have performed, how our agencies are performing, and a detailed focus on the implementation of the Growing Gauteng Together 2030 strategy. And institutionalizing the process of implementing the strategy was very important. So we took a view up front that you can't walk in as if there hasn't been any policy developed by provincial government. The policy exists. What we need to ensure is to focus on the implementation of those programs and policy. And that's been the bulk of our focus. And I should say I'm encouraged by the response of the departments and the agencies in the department to the extent that there is a collective focus on addressing the economic challenges we confront with an understanding that our economy has lost in excess of 600,000 jobs during the COVID period. That at the back of an economy that wasn't growing at a particularly good rate. In fact, we're in the middle of a recession when COVID hit, and unemployment levels were already extremely high in our province. So COVID exacerbated an already existing problem and required that we accelerate implementation of our programs and achieve the necessary outputs.
All right. Just in terms of that implementation, MEC, practically speaking, when you stepped into the role, what were your targets and what have you been able to achieve so far as we approach your first 100 days in office, sir?
Well, firstly, I think I should say that, having said, we started with a business planning exercise. So influencing that was very important, and aligning the department's business plans to that of the overall provincial government strategy and defining specific outputs had been very critical. The second was about mobilizing social partners in the process of implementation. We have been engaging with a number of organized formations and individuals around the implementation of our programs, and this has yielded some results. We're working with the PPGA, Public-Private Growth Initiative, PPGI, in relation to the implementation of plans in a whole range of areas where implementation should be an area of focus. So we are in current discussions with them, the SASME Fund, and also the IDC on a funding mechanism for small enterprises. So that's one of the critical projects we're driving in relation to ensuring access to finance, particularly for township-based enterprises.
Right.
We're also compiling and completing the process of the enactment of the Township Economic Development Act, and one had to accelerate the implementation of that. And we have focused our energies on ensuring that with partner organizations, we can focus on particular sectors. One of the key sectors that has been defined in the Growing Gauteng Together 2030 strategy is in relation to the automotive industry. And on my arrival, one of the key projects we needed to ensure that it does not lag behind in terms of the timelines was the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone, where there is a commitment by Ford, not only to invest, but to produce 200,000 vehicles per annum and to expand from there going forward, which increases the country's production of automobiles and exports almost 80% of those vehicles. So driving that has been a very crucial project in terms of ensuring that where there were blockages and linkages, we are able to address those and implement.
Right.
But we're also focusing on other special economic zones. So we're in the process of finalizing the lodging of.
Can I just jump in there? We will delve or reveal further the initiatives are being done in the SEZs in just a moment. But just to bring our other panelist in this conversation, just for a brief second, Mosa, to also give her introductory remarks. And Mosa, last time we spoke with you here at CNBC Africa, in fact, I remember I was working from home then, but you spoke about the plans that the GGDA had to play its role in lifting the economic recovery, or helping to do so. How much heavy lifting have you been able to do so far, and especially against the constraints of that lockdown that we entered in December, that was recently lifted in February?
Thanks, Fifi. And you're absolutely correct. I think we were all working from home at that time. Of course, with the continuous lockdowns and essentially what I call the war we are fighting between the virus and vaccines. So, that impacting the economy significantly. Equally, and I think as alluded to by the MEC as well, the fact that just in the province of Gauteng, as an outcome of COVID, and over the last 12 months, we've essentially lost close to 600,000 jobs. So the pressure is absolutely increased on an entity like ours as the GGDA, and overall from an economic development perspective, through the department as well. One of the key things that we've had to do quite rapidly was, first of all, to ensure that we are able to start creating a digital platform in which we are able to offer our services. Because the impact naturally of the lockdown has been that, in-person interaction and engagement, and the ability to offer our services both to investors, whether domestic or foreign, and equally to businesses and SMEs, etc., has been hampered significantly. So, now we've now worked on and are implementing an export portal in the organization and a virtual desk as well, so that we have the necessary reach. We've also looked at very specifically and in conjunction with various partners, both in the public sector, whether at national or local government level, and equally on the continent, looking at how we solidify our strategy around bringing into effect the free trade agreement, how we ensure that, in our respective trade blocks around the continent, we are creating the necessary opportunities and exposure for businesses based in the province of Gauteng and equally in South Africa as well, because economic recovery is not just about, the province of Gauteng or South Africa, but the continent has to really move collectively in that direction. But over and above that, and I think the MEC started alluding to it as well, is really a speed tracking the special economic zone agenda, because in the absence of creating an enabling environment for manufacturing to thrive and advanced industrialization, we really are not going to be able to recover at a pace and a speed at which we need to in order to recover the jobs that have been lost, but equally to make South Africa competitive in the value chain of various sectors and industries globally as well. Fifi, just a few critical stats to speak to is 55% of the manufactured goods exports that leave South Africa are goods manufactured in Gauteng. 1 in 8 jobs that are created in Gauteng or that exist in Gauteng are in the manufacturing space as well. in engaging with the team and looking at the statistics, since 2014, overall, we've had 2 out of 3 of the FDI investments that have come into the province of Gauteng being in the manufacturing space. So it's really about looking at how we are fast-tracking our ability to also provide economic infrastructure. So the SEZ agenda very much front and center in the approach going forward as well.
Right, and I'm sure the targets are to lift those statistics even further over the years, Mosa, and also to the MEC, but that is going to be difficult so long as the virus is still with us. And even MEC, the plans and the targets that you have to implement at provincial level, the reconstruction and recovery plan, is also going to be difficult so long as we haven't received or achieved that 2/3 majority in terms of our vaccination rollout. So can you bring us up to speed with that at provincial level? How will that happen? And it needs to happen, I'm sure you will agree, at an accelerated pace to avoid any further lockdowns that will curtail any more progress in economic activity that we're trying to achieve.
Well, Fifi, in fact, we're currently in the process of exercising oversight on the vaccine sites in the province of Gauteng. The Premier ensured that all members of the executive are able to visit various vaccine sites. Last week, Thursday, I visited 3 of the vaccine sites in Ekurhuleni. And I can assure you that, in fact, in terms of the level of readiness, those sites are ready. Tomorrow, I'll also be visiting another few sites, as will my other colleagues in the provincial executive be visiting other sites. And this is about ensuring readiness. Institutionally, I can confirm that we are ready in terms of the public-led sites, but it's also about the appropriate partnerships with the private sector, because some of the sites would be in the private sector. And there's been engagement in the provincial command council with the private sector to ensure their level of readiness and to satisfy ourselves, in fact, that they are ready from that point of view. And it's about an entire value chain. It's about at the point that the vaccines have been procured and are being deployed into the province, to have the appropriate cold storage sites. So storage becomes an important part. The logistics around the movement of the vaccines to the appropriate sites, the number of vaccines that would be moved to a particular region and site, and how to ensure continuous supply and the protection of the vaccination sites. Cold storage facilities are some of the issues we're looking at, and meeting the standards as set by the World Health Organization and the pharmaceuticals in terms of ensuring that the vaccines are stored at the appropriate level. And those are some of the issues we've been looking at, and we're quite satisfied in the province that as soon as the vaccines arrive, we'll be able to speedily deploy and roll out in the province.
All right. MEC, coming back to you in just a moment, just to hear more what you had to say about the special economic zones and also the plan to crowd in more participation in these zones. But Mosa, before we bring our other voices in on this conversation, you had spoken about the free trade area deal and ensuring that that is implemented, or that gets going to the desired level of perfection, as one of the things the GGDA has been looking at. How has that been going practically, though, since January, when that deal got up and going?
Fifi, let me contextualize my response first by saying that from a continental perspective, there's a very real appreciation that this is necessary. The continent of Africa is a growth frontier for any country, right, from an economic development perspective. But equally, we appreciate that, for example, the European Union, to get to where it is today, took 70 years. Now, we as an African continent don't have 70 years to create the necessary efficiencies and collaborations that has taken other continents and countries to achieve. And so I believe that what's encouraging is that there's a very concerted effort, not only from the Secretary General of the agreement, based in Ghana, who's actually a South African, Mr. Wamkele Nene, a concerted effort by all countries to really look at how we collaborate better. I mean, from a SADC region perspective, as an example, we ourselves have started speaking more regularly and putting in more meaningful plans in place, understanding what are, for example, the logistical and infrastructure challenges that are hampering even us as a region, collaborating and working better together. But secondly, there's also an appreciation that from an infrastructure perspective, we as a South African country overall are a lot more advanced than maybe many other countries. And so we have an increased responsibility to, one, look at how we support our fellow countries in leveraging of our manufacturing capabilities, as an example. So I'll use a very simple example, because with one of our partners in Ghana, and I'm practicalizing this, is appreciating that South Africa and Gauteng's manufacturing capability is very advanced. So how do we look at raw materials, leaving Ghana, coming to South Africa, being processed and manufactured, and then exported to other geographies? So it's the low-hanging fruit. How do we look at bringing SMMEs into the value chains that are necessary? From a GGDA perspective, we do a lot of export readiness training, but equally, we also do export facilitation. So identifying opportunities across the continent, looking at what the challenges are to executing and really leveraging of those opportunities as well. So it's a concerted effort, it's a continuous effort, and there is a very strong camaraderie that is building, and that's very encouraging. And I think collectively as a continent, we recognize our space in the global economy, and we recognize that we have this opportunity to work together and be, and be as competitive as other regions.
All right. Noted. Thanks for contextualizing things a lot better, Mosa. But we now have two Gauteng stakeholders joining us for this discussion. Direen Van Mali, who is the Director of Government Affairs for Africa at Ford Motor Company, as well as Sandile Gwala, who is the CEO of Solu Growth. Sandile, you are on the board of the Harambee and very involved in the partnership in the global business services sector, with the primary objective to create employment in South Africa, especially amongst the youth. What is the situation at the moment, and how positive are you about the future?
Thank you very much, Fifi, for that question. And as you've pointed out, I play a couple of roles myself in Harambee. I'm also running my own news service company called Solu Growth, which is also playing in the global business services. But what had happened in about 2016, in actual fact, MEC will remember in his previous life, he was a member of the mayoral committee as a mayor in the city of Johannesburg. He had started what at the time was called Tsepo 500, and which was upgraded to Tsepo 1 million, which is now managed by the Premier of Gauteng. And the Premier of Gauteng utilized this platform to set up or bring collaboration between various stakeholders that we as a sector in GPS were also brought onto the table to say, how can we create 1 million jobs in South Africa, particularly in Gauteng, over the number of years. And we signed up in that partnership. And if I look what has happened, Fifi, over the last 2-3 years, this is a sector, maybe for some of the viewers who are not aware of what is global business services. Global business services is about services that are provided by companies sitting here in Gauteng, providing them for companies based in the United States, based in the United Kingdom, based in Australia. That can be contact centers, that can be accounting services, that can be IT outsourcing. And that has been very successful. That partnership up to so far has been training a number of young people. Over 60% of people that we've been able to employ in this sector are young people. And the majority of that 60% are people that are coming into employment for the very first time. And because of that, and because of the partnership that we had with the Gauteng government, with Harambee, with various stakeholders, we have been able to create a number of jobs.
All right.
Do we think it's going to be able to continue going forward because of COVID? In actual fact, it is one of those sectors that are positive beneficiaries because people now are able to work from home and the infrastructure has been tested, particularly from South Africa to serve global clients. It has been proven that this sector is going to grow. So we are still expecting double digits growth even post-COVID, particularly for Gauteng, benefiting from the infrastructure that has been set up for TSEPO 1 million.
Encouraging feedback, Sandile, especially as we look at a frighteningly high unemployment rate here in South Africa, particularly amongst the youth. So that positive outlook is certainly something that has left us with some encouragement. But Duren, just your thoughts in terms of Ford, your participation in the SEZs, and particularly here in Gauteng, the role that you envision in playing for or towards economic growth.
Gauteng remains to be the most strategic opportunity for Ford Motor Company. For that reason, we've invested 16 billion into Gauteng, and subsequently helped facilitate and conceptualize together with government the Tshwane Automotive SEZ. In addition, the Gauteng Eastern Cape High Freight Corridor. We think Gauteng is poised to encourage a strong investment opportunity, and for that reason, we've opted to expand within Gauteng. Over the period of the last several years, we have worked together with the GGDA, with the MEC's office, with the provincial office, in terms of how to cement and how to ensure that the infrastructure and the investment and the safety of Ford Motor Company investing 16 billion in South Africa would continue and progress, and this would be the beginning of what's to come inevitably. And I think we've achieved this. And to Mosa's point, Gauteng is not just about Gauteng in South Africa, but also its ability to participate on the continent with regards to the free trade agreement and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think all the activities that we participate economically, infrastructure, with growth, with training, and together with the partnership with the African Union and the AFCTA, as a synergistically, this is probably the most opportune time for Gauteng to leverage this opportunity for scale. Okay. And we can clearly see this with our investment and with the drive and with infrastructure investments.
All right. So as we wrap up this conversation that has gone really quickly, Mosa, if you could just leave us with an understanding of the immediate priority areas for the GGDA as they sit in front of you, and the role that you envision the private sector playing in helping you action those plans.
Sure. I think the first thing is an appreciation from our perspective as government that in order to achieve the economic recovery and growth that we want to achieve, it's not about government doing it, but it's about co-creating this economic recovery with private sector. And so the first thing that is on my list of priorities and has been spoken to by all the panelists so far is very much continuously building the partnerships in the key focus sectors of the province. Partnerships that enable us to crowd in and aggregate those players in the different sectors, and therefore look at what the master plans look like and look at what the implementation of key recovery initiatives look like. Secondly, it's absolutely very much about ensuring that from a continental perspective, South African companies and South African businesses, Gauteng-based SMEs, find opportunities that they can take advantage of as they expand their businesses, not only on the continent, of course, but in all the different regions of the world, but a strong focus on the continent. It's very much ensuring that our SME ecosystem, not just in the province, but at a national level as well, is closed in. So as we identify opportunities for businesses across the continent, we ensure that they're not disadvantaged, for example, from a funding perspective where the opportunity exists, they're able to provide the good or service, but they are limited from a funding capability to be able to take advantage of that. So closing that ecosystem becomes critical, and therefore the kind of partners that we need to bring together around the table include, funding agencies. Government has various funding capabilities and agencies that service business, particularly SMEs. It includes those who are in the business of skills development, incubation, etc., so that all of us, when focusing on our particular mandates and capabilities and strength, are able to come to the table and meaningfully support businesses in order to recover, to grow, and to find new opportunities across the board. So, in summary, GGDA plays, therefore, a critical role in ensuring that government's plans and private sector's plans are centralized in a place that we are co-creating the recovery and the economic development for the country, for the province, but equally for the continent as well. So
Right.
all stakeholders coming and understanding that as a Gauteng province, we have priority sectors. And in those sectors, for example, ICT, logistics, tourism in the creative sector, energy, the automotive sector, Diren has spoken to, the agricultural sector, agro-processing, agro-business, agrotech, financial services, fintech. How do we really create a coherent relationship that ensures that collectively we are achieving the goals of job creation, of technological transfers and technological advancements? A lot of research and development is done in South Africa. A lot of SMEs have solutions that will really be able to propel this country and this continent forward. So how do we create the ease of doing business that they all find expression, and therefore, as government, we can be responsive to our social agenda.
All right. All right. And MEC, just final words from you, sir. I mean, as you edge towards achieving all the milestones and the targets of the 2030 Growing Gauteng Together plan, what is your message to business, sir? And, why they should get involved, and what is in it for them, especially as the relationship between business and government in our recent past has been quite a precarious one?
Well, firstly, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. I think that it is in the interest of business that the economy grows, that we address the bottlenecks where there are bottlenecks, and that we develop the appropriate partnerships to ensure that there's sector development, there's enterprise development, and the economy overall is able to grow and create the necessary jobs that we need. And I've been encouraged in the past few months in our engagement with both individual enterprises, but also organized business formations around their appetite to partner with government. We have found a situation where business has come in and said, okay, can we now work on addressing these specific challenges? And we've designed processes with them that look at particular sectors and the interventions that we need. I mean, Tehran would confirm one of the major challenges we currently have is the availability of steel to support the work that they do in relation to the automotive sector. It's also affecting the rail sector and other sectors. And we've reached out to business, and they've shown an appetite for us to address the problems that have stalled the steel industry in the country, and something that we're actively working with industry on to find solutions. I've been encouraged by the extent to which, as I said, the PPGI and other organized business formations have come to the party, and we now have specific programs that we're working on in particular sectors. And that creates, I think, a sense that there is an overall understanding that we have to put in collective effort to achieve our objectives. But also, as I said, individual enterprises. We have found that having reached out to business, having spoken to them, many of them are coming with direct initiatives that say, we would want to partner with you in this area, whether it's in relation to enterprise development and supplier development, whether it's in relation to actually the aggregation of enterprise development and supplier development initiatives by the private sector so that we can maximize value and benefit. We've seen that business is prepared to work with us to address those issues. And that, I think, is a very good sign in terms of the growth prospects going forward. Part of what business has said is we are also equally encouraged by the extent to which government has now reached out, and government has reached a point where there is an overall understanding that we have to work on this together, and where there are challenges, we need to resolve them, whether it's in relation to government-related challenges or whether it's in relation to limitations by the private sector to invest because there is a sense that maybe the period is not right. How to ensure that we're able to overcome those problems and create confidence that this is the right time in which to invest in the future is bright for this country and for enterprise overall.
Exactly so, and it is on that note that we will leave this conversation, and I believe that it's a conversation, one of many to come as we discuss a strategy and also implementation initiatives to help South Africa build back better, but also help it play its role in the continent's reindustrialization. But we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much to my guests for joining the CNBC Africa Special. That is Parks Tau, the Gauteng MEC for Economic Development, Environment, Agriculture and Rural Development, as well as Mosa Tshabalala, Group Chief Executive Officer of the GGDA, and of course a special thank you to the guest hosts or guest panelists, if I can call them that did join the show a little earlier. Sandile Gwala, the CEO of Solu Growth, as well as Duren Van Mali, the Director of Government Affairs for Africa Ford Motor Company. And that's where we leave it for now, but be sure to join the next conversation on this very important matter. But from us, it's goodbye.